I'm the world's worst. I'll tell off on myself.
That's your last supper.
My last supper? Yeah. I got today. I still got today.
You still got today.
Yeah, amen. Do y'all know where the book of Revelation's at? It's the back of the book. Well, let's turn over there. I want to look at a couple things here. And I'm going to be in chapter 4, but before I get to chapter 4, I'm going to be in 4 and 5. I want to show us a couple things here. But in chapter 1, verse 19, I want us to see here where Jesus is speaking. If you have a red letter edition, you'll notice that once, I think chapter 4 goes on, you never have anything in red letters. But when Jesus speaks, it's in red letters. Well, so 1 and 9, this was John was on the Isle of Patmos. And, John knew Jesus personally. John had experienced a lot of things. John was a faithful person. He was faithful to the Lord, faithful to the things of God. And it did cost him some things. He was persecuted. He was probably talked about. A lot of things took place. And as a follower of Christ, don't think for a minute that you will not be persecuted in some way or another. You'll be talked about, and you'll be, people will say one thing to your face and another thing once you're not around. I call them two-faced. But I'm just saying this morning that it doesn't matter what they say. It's what matters is what God sees in us. And so Jesus was showing John here the revelation of things to come to pass. And he tells him that in verse 19, chapter 1. Write the things which thou hast seen, and the things which are, and the things which shall be hereafter. He says, just make a note of all these things, the things that you have already seen, and then also what thou sawest. And the things which are, and the things which shall be hereafter. That to me is what God's called the church to do. As we remind people of what it was, but where we're at and where we're headed. Amen? But I noticed as I was reading Revelation, and that's why I said go to Revelation chapter 4, I wanted to read something else here. Let me see if I can find it. Okay. It's in verse number 1, chapter 4. It says, after this, now this was John's vision as he was looking at the throne of God. We've never been there. We can only, kind of imagine. We can kind of interpret what we think it might be like. But this is what God was showing John. He says in chapter 4, verse 1, after this I looked, and behold, a door was opened in heaven. In other words, there was an opening that he was able to see into heaven. Now, we've got our own ideals of what things look like through that door, don't we? But we only got the scriptures to go by. And he says, and the first voice which I heard was as it were of a trumpet talking with me, which says, come up hither, and I will show thee things which must be hereafter. He's talking about this is what's going to take place. There's prophecy in the Bible, all through the Bible. Much of it's already taken place, but there's still a whole lot that's not been fulfilled yet. Amen? We're talking about the coming of the Lord, coming back for the church. We're talking about God's wrath on the face of the earth. We're talking about a lot of things. So, church, we need to be aware. And we can say, well, I know all that, Brother Mike. I know what's about to take place. Well, I can say it, but I don't act like I do. Do we ever get like that? That we get it in our head but for some reason we don't get it down in our heart. That we don't act. That we have been called as a trumpet to sound an alarm. That we, tell our family, tell our friends, do it in the right spirit. We don't want to be holier than thou. We're not trying to say that. We're just trying to say, listen. That's what Revelation is saying. Listen. This is what's going to take place. It doesn't matter if you died 10 years from now, 100 years from now, you're still going to be called up that day, and you're still going to have to deal with what some of the things are said in the book of Revelation. Nobody's going to escape that. In our Sunday school class this morning, and I'm always bringing up our Sunday school class, but we was reminded that our name must be written in the Lamb's Book of Life. If your name is not written in the Lamb's Book of Life, then you have no life, you have no place in heaven. Amen? And only you have the choice to make to put your name in there or to take your name out of there. Now, I'm not a once saved, always saved person. I believe you can always be saved if you're doing what's right. But I don't believe in without anything. I've been down that road that you can give away back to God something you started out with, the gift of God, and turn your back on God, and it's time to get back on track with God. I still believe that people can turn their lives back around and look back and say, man, I've messed up. I've made some bad mistakes. You might have got saved according to you when you was a kid. I'm not saying that. You might have got baptized. You might have went to church. But 5-10 years later, you completely left all of that. And you got out in the ways of the world and hanging out with the wrong crowds, doing the wrong things. But we need to we need to look in the mirror at ourselves today and say, what about me? Am I on track? Because these things are going to come to pass. Revelation is really not that hard. You could make it complicated, but it's not really that hard. I talked to a preacher years ago. I don't remember the name of the church. It was something like First Disciples Church or something. And I was talking to him about Revelation. He said, we don't ever read Revelation. I mean, can you even imagine not ever reading the book of Revelation? I mean, it gives you a picture of what's going to be happening. Amen. And so now I want to drop down to chapter 5. And here he has these books. Or he has a book with 7 seals. In other words, those books are sealed. I remember the day when we used to see these big trucks and had the big doors on the back. And they would put a seal on there. And that seal, whenever you don't open that seal, you wait till what? You get to where it goes, and they unlock that seal. That way they know it's never been tampered with. And so these seals he talks about here, there's 7 seals he talks about here in chapter 5. And I'm going to read just a little bit of this morning. And he says, and I saw in the right hand of him that sat on the throne a book written within, and on the backside sealed with 7 seals. So I'm trying to get my mind wrapped around that there's a book back there, whatever it is, but it's sealed with 7 seals. Not just 1, but 7. And he says, and I saw this was interesting, I saw a strong angel, proclaiming with a loud voice, who is worthy to open this book and to loose the seals thereof? Who's worthy? We're not worthy, are we? That'd be like me hauling a load of stuff and saying, Ed, I'm going to California. Come over here and break these seals. You're not worthy enough to break those seals. It has to go all the way. And let the head of things, let the owner of the things, let him open that seal. So This angel saying, who is worthy? Who is worthy to loosen the seals thereof? And the Bible tells us in verse 3, listen to what he says. And no man in heaven nor in earth, neither under the earth, was able to open the book, neither to look thereon. There was nobody. And he says in verse 4, and I wept much because no man was found worthy to open and to read the book, neither to look thereon. And one of the elders, verse 5, saith, what was that? That wasn't Chuck Elder either. It was one of the overseers. One of the elders saith unto me, weep not. Now, where's John seeing? He's seeing through the door. He's seeing into heaven, right? And this is what he's experiencing. So this elder said unto him, weep not. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, hath prevailed to open the book and to loose the 7 seals thereof. Who was the Lion of Judah? Who was the Root of David? Jesus Christ. Not Muhammad, not any of the Hindus, it was Jesus Christ was the only one found worthy to open those seals to that book. And it tells you from beginning to end. He says in verse 6, and I beheld, and lo, in the midst of the throne, and of the 4 beasts, and in the midst of the elders, there stood a lamb as it had been slain. I want to stop there a minute. I mean, I kind of look into things maybe different than some people. But I've got a picture of a lamb that's been slain. I've got a picture of something that somebody had slain, killed it, or whatever they done. And so what he sees here, he says here, and behold, and lo, in the midst of the throne of the 4 beasts, and in the midst of the elders, stood a lamb as it had been slain. Not that it is, but it had been, having 7 horns, 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God, sent forth into all the earth. Anytime you see the word 7, does that not represent completeness? It's done. It's finished. It's complete. There's 7 days in the week. Start back over. Amen. And he came, verse 7, and he came and he took the book out of the right hand. There's that right hand again. Right hand has a lot of significance. If you study about the right hand of God, the right hand. What is it when you go before the earthly judge today and you put your don't you put your left hand on the Bible? Do they even do that anymore? And they raise their right hand? Is that why they do it? I've never been there. I don't know. Maybe some of you crooks might know what I'm talking about. I've never had to go that far. I just got a couple of speeding tickets in my life. Does anybody know what takes place?
Well, you used to raise your hand on the Bible, swear that you tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
It's that your right hand goes on the Bible.
It goes back to Roman times. The right was considered good, and the bad, the left was considered evil.
Okay. Thank you, Chuck.
You're welcome.
I was waiting on the encyclopedia to open up and tell me that. The right hand went on the Bible, the left hand raised up, and then repeated after them. And you know what they repeated?
What do you mean?
When they was swearing on the Bible?
I swear to tell
The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me what? God. They were testifying before the Lord. Are y'all got that on the right track? Okay. I don't want to mislead anybody but I've never been that far in my life. I've never been in jail. I've never had to go through that process. So probably if I did, I would remember. Amen. Ed, you ever been that far out?
A couple times.
Okay, I just wondered about you. I'm the only one in here. Aaron, you ever been that far out?
I've been handcuffed a couple times.
Well, Lord have mercy. Look at here.
I just remember when I was a kid, I had a witness